You're going to be scared all the time. And in your mind, you're thinking, and everybody does this. Okay, this is what it felt like for me when I first blew my first account or approaching, going back in through correcting drawdown. Everybody that goes through drawdown, everyone, I don't give a fuck how long you've been trading, how much money you make. When you go through drawdown and you have an equity high and you've drawn down from that equity high, you feel like you're staring up at a mountain. And it may not even be that much money. And this is not a lot of money. I could literally do his entire funded account shit on Monday. I could get him at 159 rate. I can do $10,000 on Monday. I can do that. That's not what this is about. I'm teaching him, but now this lesson came a whole lot sooner and not in the way I wanted it to happen. I wanted him to do those things in front of me where I can control how much the drawdown was and then teach him right then and there. Okay, now this is what you're going to do to mitigate it. You're going to stop right here today. Leave it alone. Go home with the loss. And then we'll come back tomorrow, trade with half the size, and then build it back up. And then you'll be fine. You won't be afraid of it. So now he has that toxic feeling of impatience. I got to get it back. And I'm sure he feels it even worse than you would because ICT's his dad. He knows I'm going to be in his ass about it. Not yet, because I don't want to add to what he's already feeling. But once we get it back up, I'm going to get into his ass. Okay. But he needs to be on good footing before I do that because I don't want to crush his spirit. Once he has the account back up, then I can chew into his ass and tell him, look, this is what you did wrong. This is how you've now impacted your perspective on price. You don't realize it yet, but you're going to remember this every single time you get into a trade and it starts drawing against you, even a little bit. It's just the beginning of that same thing I just did to myself in the beginning. 3 years from now, you're going to think that same thing. And there's two perspectives to have in mind. You can look at that and then cause it and allow it to cause paralysis and second guess yourself. Or you can say, yep, that's the reason why I'm using a stop loss. Yep, that's the reason why I'm not over leveraging. Yep, that's the reason why I'm going to take a loss in the session and stop and come back the next session. If I'm all going to trade anymore today, I have to wait and come back in the next session. You place time between your transactions. Because if you're trading when you take a loss and you go right back in, unless you have a lot of experience, it's better for you to take a step away, put time between that, because you have chemicals coursing through your bloodstream that are really having an impact on how you see things. See, in your mind, you see that loss or that drawdown as an emergency, just like he felt on Friday morning. He felt that that was an emergency. He could lose that entire thing and have to reset it. I would not be ashamed of that because that's normal. He doesn't know what he's doing. Left to his own devices and his own intellect, he would absolutely 100%, 1,000% likelihood he's going to fail that if I'm not next to him. And that was the reason why I told him, I said, make these decisions when I'm next to you and let me filter them for you. Okay. You'll learn still by doing it, but let me at least be there to filter it. And Friday morning, he wanted to be, 18 in life to go mentality. He's going to go out there and be a murderer and kill it. And bottom line is, he wasn't ready. And he found out by shock and awe that he was absolutely not ready. And if they didn't have that threshold of stopping him, he probably would have done more damage. Because listening to him, I didn't get any kind of indication that he had any breaks. So he was pushing and pushing until the brakes came off. He wasn't going to stop until he was done, one way or the other. And that's exactly how all of you, and that's exactly how I was as a 20-year-old when I was blowing accounts. That's exactly what it was like in my head. I'm going to push this bitch until the brakes come off. Nothing's stopping me. No one could have told me, stop what you're doing. You're being careless, reckless, you're gambling, you're trying to do something that's impossible to do right now. Your clarity is escaping you. You don't have it. You're literally just pushing the button, hoping something happens with no reason for having any reason to be in the trade. You just want to do something. You feel like you got to do something. Why? Why do you feel like that? Because you have adrenaline coursing through your body and you scared the shit out of yourself, and cortisol. Those two chemicals in your body is telling you what? The same thing your brain is telling you. You've made it a emergency. You're lying to yourself by saying, I should be panicking right now, when you shouldn't be. The opposite. As soon as you start feeling emotional about it, like you have to take the trade, you've got to get in there. That is the clearest indication to turn them fucking charts off. Leave your house, go for a drive with your phone not in your hand, and spend at least 30 minutes away. You got to let those chemicals and imbalances burn off, because you're literally under the influence of high stress chemicals that our bodies produce to enable us to fight or run away. It's fight or flight. And you're sitting here in front of these charts telling yourself that there's an emergency that you've created. And there's a fire that you got to put out. You know how you put it out? It's real easy. Close all positions, remove all orders, turn the charts off, and get the fuck away from it. There it is. It's handled. No more emergency. That's it. You have a paper cut. Yes, your pride's hurt. Yes, you did damage to the account, but you have an account still. If you blow the account, yeah, you burned your house down. It sucks. But all of that still is not an emergency. You can refund, you can reset, you can add more money to an account, all that. But see, what happens is when you draw down from an equity high, especially when you're new, and then you fall from that height, and $3,400 is shit money. Like, it's nothing. It's not even real money. It's the combine. But in his mind, he's thinking like that's a lot of money to him, and he wants to get funded. He wants to, and here's the reason why he's wanting to rush too. They have senior week coming up in June, where all the kids here, they all go down to Eastern Shore and rent hotel rooms, and they all act like fools and carry on. And he wants to have a lot of money to just do whatever and be a baller in front of his girlfriend. And that was what was in his mind Friday morning. He wanted to be out there, throwing dollar bills around, like a madman, and looking, padded out. Because he knows I'm not going to throw money at him like that, because I know he's going down there to be foolish. So I tell him save all his money that he's earning at his coffee shop job, and then he spends that. So of course, being a young man, he wants to have more than that. So when you have these equity highs that you slip away from and you have drawdown, it literally feels like you're walking up to a mountain and you're looking up, getting a kink in your neck as you look up at the height, and you tell yourself, I gotta get all the way back up there. When before, when you were building it up, you didn't look at that like that. You were just trying to take one trade at a time. It was just one step at a time, like a rock climber. Where's my next foothold? Where's my next gripping point? That's all you cared about. You're doing the right thing. That's following the model. Now what's happening is when you are in drawdown, you're looking up at that mountain, that peak that you slid down from. And you're thinking, how am I going to get back up there? Well, fuck, how did you get there the first time? Incremental, modular steps. Basic, boring, following the rules, doing this, expecting that, doing this, expecting that, one piece at a time. Think about it. Before you go into drawdown, you're not trying to do crazy shit. You're just trying to do what's the next trade. Do that. Stop. Make your money, be done, turn the charts off, wait for the next session, wait for the next trading day. It's business. But now you're looking at that same business that you now have a loss. You're in drawdown. You're looking up at that old equity high, and you're telling yourself, this is going to be so hard to get back up to that. I just want to get to it really, really fast. And you're wrestling with these impulsive feelings that you got to get in there and just do really big trades because you just got to get through it. The quicker I can climb back up there, the better. When that's absolutely the worst mentality to have. You need to tell yourself the same thing you did before. I'm going to find my next setup based on the model. I'm going to risk less money. I'm submitting to the idea now because I have to do this at a longer duration. I've pushed my finish line further away from me in time because I've created this drawdown. The drawdown is not it's not an end of a career. It's it's a struggling point you have to wrestle through, yes. But the wonderful thing is once you go through that first drawdown and you mitigate all of that, but you do so correctly. The worst thing you can do is go in there and YOLO, you only live once type trading, to try to get it all back in one fell swoop. It's over. Because what you'll think if you are able to do that by luck is that you're better than you really are. And that drawdown has not had any lasting impression on you to prevent you from being reckless in the future. So you're looking up at that peak, that equity high that you drew down from, losing trade here, losing trade there, and now you're in drawdown. You're not to look at that and say, I got to quickly get back there. No, you don't. Because when you were taking your trades that got you there, you didn't say, I have to be there by this day. Nobody had that mentality, that mindset. When you were getting to that equity high, you were just taking one trade, next trade, next trade. That's all you're doing. But now because you're in drawdown, your whole entire perspective about yourself, your abilities, and how it is that you're going to get back up there is completely distorted. That's what makes drawdown become a blown account. Not understanding that mentality that you're now holding is extremely fragile. It's so brittle that the next trade you put on, you're going to be so hypersensitive to every little fluctuation that it's going to make you scared. You're going to be impatient about it. You will not be willing to sit through the stop being hit again. You're going to be more likely to not want to use a stop loss like he did on Friday morning. And then when you don't have a stop and it goes past what your stop would have been, you'll be wrestling with, well, if I get out, it might be just going just past where my stop would have been, and then it reverses. And you start telling yourself that bullshit. You start giving yourself pillow talk on a one-night stand. Oh, honey, I really enjoyed the time with you. Let me just stay a little bit longer with you. When really you just want them to fall asleep so you can sneak out. You know you shouldn't be in that trade, but you start doing pillow talk. Yeah, I'll be all right. It's probably going to turn around. And the whole time it's just going deeper into you, running that sword deeper into you. And more damage is being done. And then finally you can't handle it and you get out. And then it moves in your favor. Not because your trade would have panned out, but because it's simply just doing something else. But your mind's going to see, oh, see, I did it wrong. And now you're going to go in there and chase it again. That's exactly what goes on in every trader's mind. When they're in drawdown, that's exactly what it is. So the only thing that is actually good about this is it happened on a Friday. So it forces 48 hours of decompression. You have to take time. You have to reset yourself. You got to remind yourself with positive self-talk that nothing has changed. These markets are still going to book the same way they book all the time. They're going to run for liquidity. They're going to go from premium to discount, discount to premium. They're going to run to inefficiencies. Everything's going to operate on time. You just did something incorrect. In this moment, because he's new, he doesn't have but just a couple of days of journals to look at. So he doesn't really have a plethora of experience of leaning back on when it was good. This is why it's essential for you to be demoing, well, not demoing, to be journaling. That way, when you start practicing with forward testing and you feel like you have encountered a period where maybe they changed the algorithm, they're not changing shit, but you'll feel like everything's broke because you're just doing it wrong. And you'll feel depressed. You'll feel like you're not getting it. You go back to your journal and you read those entries where you saw this coming. The chart looks like this, and you feel better about it. And it gives you the motivation. It cheerleads you through it. He doesn't have that. So it's a lot harder for him right now because he's shamed, wanted to impress dad, wanted to do well, wanted to do something independent, all of himself. And then he did that. So $4,000 of what would be considered, drawdown is nothing. That's a morning session on a couple contracts for me. And I spent the afternoon on Friday basically explaining to him that, listen, like, even though Friday was a bit of a crummy day technically, like it was a lot of give and take, spotty price action. It looked like I was watching the Dow futures when I was looking at ES. And when I was working with my older students, we were watching some of the price action. It was just really weird. And I called out and marked out, with them and my son, several 5-handle runs here and there, back and forth. And I told him, I said, listen, don't be afraid because you did this to be able to go forward. Don't let it bog you down to make you feel like you're going to never be able to do this, because you're going to tell yourself all this weekend that you made a mistake and you want to be able to go back in time and never have done it. It's every trader's, regret. When they lose money. I think my dog see the deer outside. We all want to go back in time and not push the button on that trade, or start trading on that day when you knew really wasn't anything in there to be trading, but I got time and get in and push the button. Maybe I'll get lucky and get some kind of a win. All those things we know after the fact, where hindsight's perfectly 2020, and you can go back and pinpoint what it is that you did wrong. He's experiencing that for the first time right now. He's having to come to grips with nobody did it. Nobody did it to him. And he's looking for some way internally how he can take the responsibility and place it on something outside of himself. Just like I did when I was 20, and just like you listening to me. Even the people that say I'm a fraud and my stuff doesn't work, that shit's the truth about you too. You want to find some kind of external reason why you fucked up because it's uncomfortable. And that's what this industry does. It's a perfect mirror. It's better than the mirror when you go to your restroom and you look at yourself in the morning, brushing your teeth, getting yourself ready. That mirror just shows you a reflection of you. This industry shows you who you really are, because you can lie in that mirror. You can comb your hair and put makeup on and shave your face and put contact lenses on that are a different color. You do all kinds of shit to change that. You can't wear a mask in this industry. All the masks fall off. As soon as you push that button, the real you is exposed. The real person inside of you, the person making the decisions, the one that's driving drunk behind the buys and the sells. That's it. That's the person that's responsible. And that sometimes is extremely difficult for an individual to take. It's extremely stressful. It's alarming sometimes when you discover, wow, I don't really have it all together. I thought I had it figured out. I had all these things, planned with all this success. And then when you put that trade on and you wrecked yourself, and then you try to fix it, not knowing what it is you're doing, and then becoming impulsive instead of realizing that, okay, I caused this situation. Let me take a step back and slow down. That doesn't happen. It's speed up, do more of the same stupid stuff, and get worse. Why do you do that? Cortisol, adrenaline, and not knowing what you're doing. Remember, in your mind, it's the equivalent of you standing in your house with every wall on fire. The room you're in is filling up with smoke. It's an emergency. Outwardly, someone looking at you, they would never feel like that's what's going on inside your head. They happen to walk by, look at you at your trading desk. Yeah, you're in drawdown. Maybe you're not smiling, but they don't feel like you're going through any kind of emergency. But inside, the whole fucking world's coming to an end. And then what are you doing? You're trying to put out all those fires. That's what he experienced. That's what I experienced every time I blew an account. That's exactly what you experience all the time too. Send me a tweet and tell me, hell yeah, if that's exactly what you've encountered when you blew your account. And you'll see, you're not the only one. Everybody has gone through this at least a dozen times. Not just once, a dozen times. And until you get to that point where you know your model and you have mastered yourself, 18-year-old kid, especially a male, I mean, he's never going to be in control of himself. Not at 18. There's too many chemicals, being pushed through his natural development. I mean, he's at the peak of his testosterone too, so he feels like he can do everything, like he's superhuman. And that's why it's a little bit harder of a prick to his ego and pride when any failure comes, because he thinks that it should be the same feeling he has when he does anything else and succeeds at. So it's good for him to be humbled. It's good for him to learn like he's learning right now. It's also good for dad because I didn't give him money, because he would have probably spent more money in drawdown or loading the account without me being there. So in a lot of ways, I'm very thankful that he took this initiative to go this route. And I think that's the reason why he wanted to do it, because he knew his own impulses. He had it in his head. He didn't tell me, but I can tell you now, as I'm talking to you about and thinking about it, he had that in mind. Once he figured out what he thought he was going to be able to do, as soon as he felt that he could do that, when he was given the car keys without me in the car with him, riding shotgun, he was just going to go, he's going to go drive to town, and he was going to drive it until the brakes came off. And thankfully, he ran out of gas.